Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here as always to cut through the noise and get straight to the core of things.
And today marks a bit of a milestone for this particular topic.
It really does. This is part 7, everyone. The final deep dive in our series exploring Eritrea, using just the sources you shared with us, the articles, the research, your notes.
It's been quite a journey through the material, covering a lot of ground.
Absolutely. Geography, history, economy, culture. We've touched on so much based on those sources. And seriously, if you've missed any of the first 6 parts, please do go back.
Yeah, they really build the context layer by layer. You kind of need the whole sequence to get the full picture from this material.
Exactly. Think of it like assembling a puzzle piece by piece from the box of information we had. So for this final piece, we're zoning in on the media landscape.
A really critical aspect. How information flows, who controls it, its reach.
Your sources actually give us a lot to work with here. We'll unpack the history, look at the current structure, the reach, all based on that material.
Okay, so let's kick things off with the history, because the sources paint a picture of, well, a surprisingly long history, but one full of stops and starts.
Stops and starts is a good way to put it. I mean, the sources say modern media was introduced way back in 1866 by missionaries?
Yeah, European missionaries, over a century and a half ago, which is remarkably early for the region, according to the material.
In an early seed, definitely.
Yeah.
But then came the interruptions you mentioned.
Right. The sources point to the illegal annexation period with Ethiopia as a major setback. The existing media infrastructure was basically left in ruins, is how it's described.
Wow. Okay, so a very early start, then basically wiped out. What happened next, according to the sources?
Well, things start to pick up again after World War II. We see the first Eritrean newspapers appearing in 1947.
During the British colonization period mentioned in the sources.
Exactly. A bit of a revival, but again, it didn't last long.
Another interruption.
The sources state that Ethiopian authorities shut these down pretty quickly after the UN-sponsored federation in 1952.
You really see, based on this account, how tangled media development was with the whole political situation.
It seems completely intertwined, yeah. And so nationalist media, as the sources describe it, really only reemerged with the armed struggle in the 60s and 70s.
Right, when the Liberation Front started using media strategically.
Precisely. And the sources really highlight the scale of the EPLF's media operation by the early 1980s. It was quite extensive for a group like that.
How extensive are we talking?
Well, the sources say daily radio broadcasts. Daily. In 6 different languages.
6 languages, every day.
Yeah. Plus an average of 8 periodicals. And get this, 9 film documentaries each year.
9 documentaries a year from the Liberation Front. That's pretty staggering output.
It is. And the films weren't just, about the fighting.
Oh. What else did they cover, according to the sources?
By the war's end, the sources list 64 films total produced by EPLF crews. They covered the struggle, yes, but also public health, culture, traditional songs, dances, social issues.
So documenting the society itself, not just the conflict.
That seems to be the picture painted by the sources, yeah.
Yeah.
It suggests media was seen as vital, built up, lost, rebuilt, and used very actively throughout these different phases.
Okay, that historical context is crucial. Now, let's pivot to the present day, or at least as presented in the sources. What are the stated objectives for Eritrean media now?
Right. The sources list 5 main goals. It's important we just state these as they're presented in the material. First, to develop free, responsible, and credible mass media.
Okay. Free, responsible, credible. Got it. What's number 2?
Second, to promote the democratization process and strengthen national unity.
National unity. The theme keeps popping up in the sources we've looked at across this whole series, doesn't it?
It certainly seems like a core focus described in the material. Okay. Third objective.
Yeah.
Provide the public with news, timely information, entertainment, and enlightenment.
News, info, entertainment makes sense. Fourth?
To enhance cultural values and traditions.
Right, preserving culture. And the last one?
Fifth is to enhance public debate and discussion.
Okay, so those are the 5 stated aims from the source material.
Mm.
Now, how does the current media landscape, as described, actually operate? Let's start with print.
Sure. The sources tell us the Ministry of Information handles the main newspaper publishing.
And there are 3 key papers mentioned.
Yes. The main one is Hadas Eritrea, which is in Tigrinya. The sources note its circulation can be as high as 60,000.
60,000. Okay, that's substantial.
And the others? There's Eritrea Aladisa in Arabic, circulation stated as over 5,000, and then the English one, Eritrea Profile.
Ah, yes, Eritrea Profile. How often does that come out?
Twice a week, according to the sources, with a circulation also around 5,000 copies.
So those are the big three state papers. But the sources also mention other things pop up.
Yeah, it notes that private magazines, specialized periodicals, things from regional bodies or charities, they appear, but irregularly. So there's some activity beyond those main three described.
Got it. Okay, let's move from print to radio. The sources seem to really emphasize radio's importance.
They do. It's called the most effective medium, especially given higher illiteracy rates in rural areas, according to the notes.
Makes sense. And the main station is Dimsi Hafash.
Dimsi Hafash, yes. Voice of the broad masses. State-owned, broadcasting from Asmara.
And this one has historical roots too, right? Back to the Liberation Front.
Exactly. The sources say it actually started back in 1979 under the EPLF. Now it broadcasts with 100 kilowatts.
Which covers the whole country.
The whole country, yeah.
Yeah.
And crucially, the sources state it's also available via satellite.
Satellite again, that global reach potential. What about languages on Dimsi Hafash? The sources mention the EPLF used multiple languages.
Oh, it's extensive. The sources list 9 Eritrean ethnic languages: Tigrinya, Arabic, Tigray, Kunama, Saho, Afar, Bilan, Hedreb, Nara.
Wow.
And on top of that, Amharic, Oromo, and Somali languages too.
That is incredibly diverse linguistic coverage, really aiming to reach everyone, it seems.
That's the impression given by the sources, yeah. And it covers lots of subjects, specific shows for kids, for youth.
Are there other radio stations mentioned?
Yes, 2 more are detailed. There's Radio Zara, that's an FM channel in Asmara.
And its focus?
Primarily music, according to the sources, both preserving cultural aspects of Eritrean music and exposure to international stuff.
Okay, more cultural and entertainment focus.
Right. And the sources note it generates income from ads, and like Dimsi Hafash, it's also available via satellite.
Another one with satellite reach.
Interesting.
And the third station?
That's Radio Sawa, also FM, but located down in Sawa, covering the southwest.
And aimed at a specific audience there.
Primarily, yes. The sources mentioned its main audience is students at the Warsa Yekelo Secondary School, which is described as a major institution there. It provides entertainment and educational programming for them.
Okay, so we have the big national broadcaster, a music culture one, and a more localized, student-focused one. That's the radio picture from the sources.
Pretty much. Now, television. The sources describe 2 state-owned TV channels.
Eri TV being the main one. Started in '93 from Asmara.
That's the one. And the sources detail its power increase over time from 1 kilowatt initially up to 5, and now operating at 10 kilowatts.
And the reach. I'm guessing satellite is involved again.
Oh, yes. Big time. The sources state Eri TV uses 3 satellites.
3.
3. To cover, and I quote from the notes here, every corner of the country and most parts of the world.
Most parts of the world. That's a very significant claim about reach for a national broadcaster,
Right.
as described in these documents.
It certainly points to a dual focus, internal and external audiences. The sources even mention it has a mobile studio.
A mobile studio? What for?
Capable of broadcasting from anywhere globally, according to the description, sending signals back to Eritrea or out to the diaspora, presumably.
Technologically quite advanced, based on that description. What languages does Eri TV use?
The sources list 6: Tigrinya, Tigray, Arabic, Amharic, Oromo, and English.
A bit less than the main radio station, but still broad.
Yeah.
And the programming.
Very diverse, according to the sources. Specialized desks for news, politics development, entertainment, sports, culture, arts.
And education, too.
Yes, extensive educational content is mentioned. Public health, agriculture, environment, household economy, children's needs, a really wide spectrum listed, and it broadcasts 204/7.
2147 with global reach potential. Okay. What's the second TV channel mentioned?
That's simply called Channel 2. It's described as a state-owned local channel, though it still covers all corners of Eritrea, apparently.
And its main purpose?
The sources state its main goal is educational. It does have some entertainment, like sports and music, but the primary focus is education. It broadcasts 7 hours a day.
So Eri TV is the big 247 national and international broadcaster, and Channel 2 is more focused on domestic education, running shorter hours.
That's the distinction presented in the source material, yeah.
Okay. Print, radio, TV. What of the source of the news itself? The news agency.
Right, Eritrea, the Eritrean News Agency.
Government operated, as described.
Yes. And its job, as outlined in the sources, is collecting news and information, local, regional, international.
And then feeding that content to the outlets we just talked about, the papers,
Right.
radio, TV, kind of the central nervous system for news.
Exactly. It's described as having a network of correspondence across all 30 subzones of Eritrea.
How do they get the news back to base?
The sources list the methods used: fax, telephone, two-way radio, even computerized radio transmission. Traditional methods, but
The internet must have changed things.
the sources confirm that. It notes the growth of internet facilities has helped digitalize and speed up communications significantly.
Right. So Irina gathers news nationally, then distributes it through those various state-run print, radio, and TV channels, which have varying degrees of reach, including significant satellite presence, according to the sources.
That structure, from collection to distribution via these different platforms, is basically the system described in the material you provided.
Okay, let's try and pull this all together then. This has been our final deep dive, focusing just on the Eritrean media landscape as detailed in your sources.
We've covered that long, interrupted history from 1866 through the liberation struggle's heavy media use.
We looked at those 5 stated objectives for the media, as listed in the sources.
Then mapped out the current structure described. The main newspapers, the different radio channels like Dimsi Hafash with its huge language range,
Radio Zara and Sawa.
the 2 TV channels, Erie TV's powerful signal and massive satellite reach described, Channel 2's educational focus,
And the central role of the Eritrean News Agency feeding it all.
and the goal here, using just the details from your sources, was to give you that focused, efficient understanding you asked for.
Hopefully, this session on the media landscape, drawing only from your material, has added that final layer to the picture we've built over these 7 parts.
Yeah, connecting the history with the current setup described.
So, as we wrap up not just this deep dive, but the entire 7-part series based solely on the sources provided, here's that final thought we like to leave you with. It stems directly from what we just discussed in the material.
Go on.
Given the really extensive reach described for Eritrea's media, especially via satellite, covering the country and allegedly most of the world, and remembering that history detailed in the sources, where media was actively built and used as a tool during the liberation struggle. How might this network, as depicted in the sources, function today in shaping both understanding inside Eritrea and perceptions outside the country?
That's definitely something to think about, based purely on the information laid out in these sources.
Indeed. And that brings us to the end, not just of this deep dive, but of our whole 7-part exploration built from the specific sources you shared on Eritrea. Thank you so much for coming along with us on this journey.
It's been fascinating to unpack all that material.
And again, if you missed any of the earlier parts, history, geography, economy, culture, and more, please do go back and listen. They really provide the foundation drawn from the sources for everything we discussed.
Definitely worth catching up if you haven't. We'll leave you with that final thought to chew on.
Thanks again for tuning in.